In the beginning, the tale unfolds with Veridan, born on a world steeped in shadow, where the Sith Empire had been reforged after near extinction. Abandoned at birth and taken in by an adoptive father who tended exotic beasts, young Veridan grew up among cages and creatures while secretly honing his gifts in the Force. His talent shone so brightly that teachers whispered of greatness awaiting him as a warrior of the Empire, yet beneath the surface, ambition stirred darker questions. One day, after a servant's small mistake, Veridan struck her down without hesitation, not out of anger, but to test the steel of his own resolve. That single act revealed the truth of his path, merciless, unflinching, and already marked by the shadow that would shape his destiny. Men are not wild beasts. They restrain their hunger and channel it toward greater purpose. And with that lesson in mind, the boy followed his father to the next display, a bird tending to its young, until the shocking moment when the supposed chick leapt up and struck down the mother, revealed as a mimic in disguise, teaching him that one must trust no one, especially the weak. And as his father guided him to a hidden cage draped in cloth, he pulled it back only to find emptiness, and in that silence his father declared this was the final lesson, leaving him to grasp its meaning on his own. Men were no savages, his father said, for true strength meant mastering hunger for blood and using it only to serve a greater purpose. With this etched in his mind, the boy followed to another exhibit, a bird calmly feeding its young, until the chick struck and killed the mother. The creature was no child at all, but an imposter, teaching him that weakness is often a mask. Trust no one, especially the frail. Then came the final lesson, a cage draped in cloth. He tore it away empty, nothing inside. He looked to his father, who offered no words beyond that this was the last truth he must learn. And in that silence, the boy understood. He thought there might be something hidden beneath the cage, but found only emptiness, a cruel lesson of hope and deception, the final gift from his father. Carrying that truth, he set out for the academy, where his rise was swift, his power undeniable, and soon he was chosen as apprentice to a formidable master. Casting aside his birth name, he embraced a new identity, one he believed more fitting for a warrior of darkness. On a mission, he encountered a broken slave girl, scarred by cruelty, and though he claimed her as his servant, she became far more his secret lover, the one who revealed a side of life he had never known. Yet his path remained bound to war and secrecy, his heart torn between power and forbidden affection, as he prepared alongside his master for the coming strike against the Republic. For a millennium, the Sith were thought to be gone, but their shadow crept back into the galaxy, and the hour of return was upon them. In the year 3681 BBY, the Empire gathered its might, ready to reclaim its ancient cradle. A strike team was chosen, led by two dark warriors, their blades thirsting for blood, their mission clear: seize Korriban and leave none alive to tell the tale. From hyperspace, their fleet erupted, tearing through the Republic station that dared to guard the world. Fire and metal rained as the defenders crumbled, and soon the invaders descended into the hangar bay, greeted by the glow of two Jedi sabers. One master, one student, standing against the storm. The duel was instant, ferocity against discipline, rage against restraint. As the master locked into combat with the seasoned Jedi, his apprentice clashed with a Padawan, each strike driving him deeper into the abyss he had embraced since birth. Blow after blow, his strength only grew, the thrill of combat feeding the fury within, his destiny unfolding in the blaze of his crimson blade. He was caught off guard when his opponent hurled a lightsaber, giving the young Padawan a chance to steady herself and forcing him onto the defensive. The fight intensified as his master unleashed a surge of lightning, only for another Jedi to intervene and redirect the attack. The enemy was proving far stronger than he had anticipated. Turning his fury toward a nearby freighter, the Sith Master struck, while a Republic soldier fired back to shield the ship. The rocket was easily deflected, but when the Jedi Master ordered his Padawan to flee, Malgus was enraged at the thought of them escaping. He joined his master in a fierce assault, yet even facing both Sith, the Jedi stood firm, wielding two blades with unmatched skill. Every strike was countered, every blow returned, until at last he drove the double-bladed weapon through the Sith Master's chest, ending him. Blasted aside, Malgus rose to see the scene unfold, his anger burning brighter than ever. His master had failed, And with fury burning in his veins, he seized the fallen weapon through the Force and charged once more. The Jedi hurled shards of wreckage to halt him, but nothing slowed his relentless advance. Each strike shattered defenses until the exhausted warrior could fight no more, his chest split open by a final, merciless blow. Victory was his. Turning to the one who had trained him, he found only disappointment. The old master's weakness disgusted him, and scorn replaced loyalty. With a swift stroke, he severed the bond forever, casting aside the frail shadow that had once guided him. Alone, he walked across the scarred world, when a vision struck an inferno consuming the stars, the Republic in ruins, the Order broken. The future blazed before him in fire. That vision forged an unshakable belief within him. His destiny was to shatter the Republic and bring the Jedi to ruin. In Chapter 3, the Battle of Alderaan, the Sith tide surged after their triumph on Korriban, spreading war across the galaxy in what became the Great Galactic War. 14 years later, he rose in rank, claimed the title of Darth, and set his sights on Alderaan, a serene world near the Republic's core. A strike there would rattle the Republic's foundations, showing the galaxy they could not defend their own. With cunning precision, he launched his assault as the Republic fleet was lured away, delivering chaos to a world unprepared. Unlike most of his kind, he defied tradition, enlisting alien mercenaries shunned by the Empire, learning their tongues and wielding their loyalty. In this unorthodox command, he stood apart, ruthless, unconventional, and resolute, carving his legend in fire and shadow. He brought in a deadly mercenary whose talents he trusted, and together they launched a brutal strike from orbit, shattering defenses before unleashing waves of Sith troops, droids, and warriors to terrorize the land. Their mission was clear: seize the capital, burn everything in their path, and spread dread across the stars. But as they marched through the valley, an elite Republic squad sprang a trap, its commander targeting the Dark Warrior with rockets that left his face scarred, though his resolve only deepened. Seizing his foe, he prepared to end him. Yet at the last moment, a Jedi Knight intervened, cutting down his executioners and forcing him into a duel. She was far stronger than before, driving him back with fierce strikes, yet the Sith drew on his pain, letting rage fuel his counterattack until every blow landed with the ferocity of a beast unleashed. As the clash raged on, the Dark Warrior severed his opponent's saber staff and raised his blade for the finishing strike, only to be halted by her desperate counter with two short weapons. He pressed forward, certain her defense would collapse, but just as she faltered, an ally charged in, detonating a grenade that hurled them both aside. The opening was all she needed. One crushing wave of power staggered him. A second brought the hillside crashing down, ending his unbeaten streak. Republic forces swept the field, routing the Sith. Yet the fallen warrior, lungs failing and skin burned, was dragged to safety by his own. As his shuttle rose toward the stars, the bitter taste of defeat seared deeper than his wounds, and vengeance burned hotter than ever. Just as the shuttle pierced the edge of the atmosphere, he felt the presence of a lone Jedi within the shattered city below, and, consumed by vengeance, ordered the craft to turn back. Amid the rubble, a Zabrak Jedi moved cautiously, unaware of the shadow descending behind him. With a thunderous leap, the Dark Warrior landed and called out, prompting the Jedi to ignite twin blue blades. Though battered, scarred, and struggling for breath, he lunged forward, determined to finish what fate had placed before him. Yet the Jedi unleashed the Force, collapsing two towering structures in a desperate attempt to crush him. Buried beneath stone and dust, he barely shielded himself with power, recalling a lesson drilled into him long ago. Fury without control is nothing but an animal's weakness. With that revelation, his rage sharpened into focus, erupting in a violent surge that hurled the Jedi away. Rising from the wreckage, he steadied himself, eyes blazing, as the stunned Jedi faced a foe who had not yet been broken. Fueled by unshakable resolve and no longer willing to underestimate his foe, he unleashed a torrent of power that quickly drove the Jedi back, forcing desperation into every strike. Yet as the clash raged, he sensed a trap. The opponent's retreat was no surrender, but bait, masking the presence of another. His father's warning echoed in his mind: never trust weakness. In an instant, the hidden figure was wrenched from concealment and crushed with the Force, leaving the first warrior seething with rage. Blinded by fury, the Zabrak hurled everything he had, but every blow was turned aside. Then came the storm dark energy coursed through his body, exploding outward in crackling fury that consumed his foe. Overpowered and broken, the Jedi collapsed to his knees, the duel brought to its brutal end. He looked upon the kneeling Jedi, despair etched across the man's face, and recalled his father's third lesson. With a flick, the weapon went silent, and for a heartbeat, hope flickered in the Jedi's eyes, believing mercy might be found where none existed. A step forward, a sudden blaze of crimson, and that hope was pierced through the chest. Deception, emptiness, the cruel wisdom of his father's final lesson etched forever into him. Sated, he withdrew to the retreating forces, his hunger for battle quieted for now. Aboard his vessel, the one who always followed him tended his wounds with care, her presence a fleeting comfort amidst the carnage. Yet no touch could undo the damage inflicted upon him. Scars carved into flesh, lungs left broken, bound him forever to a mask that allowed him to draw breath. The clash on Alderaan had marked him, body and soul, leaving behind a warrior remade in shadow. Chapter 5. Though the assault crumbled, it worked as the perfect diversion. While the defenders clashed with waves of droids, a strike team slipped inside and blasted a breach in the wall, letting the Dark Army pour through and seize the capital in swift, brutal fashion. Yet, even in victory, petty rivalries festered, with one commander shamelessly claiming the glory for a plan that had already failed, stoking Malgus's contempt to its peak. The city had fallen, but its people resisted, and without fresh supplies or reinforcements, the conquest grew fragile. Requests for aid went ignored, leaving the Dark General exposed as the Republic retaliated with a fleet of cruisers that smashed into orbiting defenses. From the balcony of a conquered palace, he watched the clash in silence before boarding his shuttle to the Dreadnought, desperate to turn the tide himself, but by the time he set foot on the bridge, the battle was already lost. The assault may have failed, but it served its purpose, drawing the defenders into battle while the infiltrators slipped through the chaos, blasting open the city wall and unleashing a swift conquest of the capital. Yet one scheming officer tried to claim the glory for a plan that had nearly doomed them, earning nothing but contempt from the true commander. Even with the city under Sith control, resistance simmered and supplies ran dangerously low, leaving the occupation hanging by a thread. Requests for aid went unanswered, and as the Republic fleet descended, the commander watched the sky ignite from a palace balcony before racing to his dreadnought to take command, only to arrive as the battle was already lost. He watched in silence as a shattered warship plunged into the skies of Orama and smashed into the capital, the force screaming with the deaths of its commander and countless innocents. Consumed by fury and sorrow, his roar of power twisted metal, shattered glass, deafened his crew, and obliterated a squadron passing too close. With no chance of victory, he pulled his armies back into the heart of Sith space. Hunted without mercy, the enemy commander swore he would see justice served, pursuing him across worlds until the fight reached Zost. Even then, the enemy pressed on, launching an assault on Ashasri. There, he seized command, leading siege tanks in brutal defense. Again and again the enemy charged, and again they were broken, until at last his forces stood triumphant. Though the cost was heavy, the Sith line held, and the Dark Council promised him that never again would he face the hunger and scarcity that had haunted him on Ororama. After crushing his foes on Ashasri, the Dark Warrior learned that the Jedi Commander had slipped away to Sereno. This opponent, a master of great renown, had nearly bested him before, and so he sought both vengeance and the chance to shatter the Republic's command. He stormed Sereno, seized the world with ruthless speed, yet the Jedi escaped once more to Coruscant. His victories elevated his place among the Sith, but with glory came suspicion, whispers that he bore blame for past disasters. Ordered to reclaim lost ground, he led his forces into a brutal campaign against New Rito, the fortress of Orama. Weeks of merciless struggle followed, with resistance fiercer than expected, but though the war dragged his reputation through doubt, he found grim purpose in the violence. At last, the city fell, and with Orama under Sith control, the Dark Council turned its gaze to an even greater prize, the burning heart of the Republic itself. Victorious once more, he was chosen to stand at the forefront of the coming assault on Coruscant. He was commanded to gather strength for a great strike on the heart of the Republic, gifted with a mighty fleet that promised devastation. For him, It was the moment he had been waiting for, the chance to shape himself into the very hand that would crush the Republic. Years of war built to this, the summit on Alderaan, where peace was dangled before the Senate while betrayal brewed in secret. The Empire's trap was set while one master directed the grand assault. He was chosen to ignite the fire by storming the Jedi Temple. The vision that once haunted him on Korriban now blazed into reality. With 50 Sith warriors at his back and an infiltrator sent ahead to sabotage the defenses, he prepared to unleash fury. Yet politics shadowed even this strike as a rival's ally was forced into his ranks, a reminder that even on the eve of destruction, the games of power never ceased. He loathed the alliance, yet had no choice but to accept it, and in the months before the strike he drowned himself in preparation, running endless simulations until perfection was etched into his mind. When the false peace was staged, the trap was finally unleashed. Side by side with his companion, he walked through the crowded plazas of the capital, faceless among the citizens, their path set toward the temple. She spoke softly of a different life, a life of peace away from the endless wars, but he cut her down with the same cold refrain that his devotion lay only to the Empire, that he would always be master and she, servant. She pushed back, insisting he was not as heartless as he claimed, that love lingered between them, but he struck back with ice, denying her hope. Still, she pressed, calling out the cracks in his creed, accusing him of speaking words he did not truly believe. His steps faltered, his body stilled, and for the first time he turned to face her, the weight of her defiance piercing through his armor of conviction. He pressed his lips to hers with fierce intensity, and for a fleeting moment their shared smile betrayed the knowledge that this could be their last embrace. Soon after, word came that the enemy's defenses had fallen, clearing the path for invasion. Side by side, they ascended the grand steps toward the temple, cutting down the guards who dared to block their way. Within 6 warriors leapt from above, joined by their commander, forming a wall of 7 against the intruders. Unfazed, he strode forward as the device on his wrist began to chime, heralding the approach of a captured ship. The sudden sound unsettled the warriors, blades igniting in unison, while their leader stood firm, earning a nod of respect. Then, with a thunderous crash, the dropship tore through the entrance, scattering stone and fire. As the dust lifted, the hatch burst open, and from the wreckage emerged a dark figure followed by 50 warriors, blades blazing like a storm ready to consume the temple. He grinned, certain this was the vision he had foreseen, and with his allies at his side, he ignited his weapon and charged. The defenders leapt back to regroup, but the clash exploded into chaos as Sith and Jedi collided. In the frenzy, he cut down soldiers and warriors alike, each strike feeding his fury. When a lone defender tried to strike at his companion, he crushed her against stone with a gesture, ending the threat instantly. The battlefield roared with destruction as his ally unleashed a devastating wave of energy that scattered troops like leaves, and he followed with a storm of lightning that consumed those in his path. Their exchange of mocking salutes only fueled the sense that the tide had turned in their favor. As he carved through foes with brutal ease, his gaze locked onto the rival he had long awaited. His every step a merciless advance through anyone who dared to block his path. Zalo's strike smashed against his foe's jaw, but the counter came swift and merciless. Steel met flesh, and in a flash the blade pierced through Zalo's body. His eyes widened in agony as the fire of the temple and the shadow of descending warships flickered in their reflection, the very image of a republic collapsing. To his killer, this was triumph incarnate, the victory of empire embodied in the fall of one warrior. Beyond the temple's shattered walls, chaos reigned. The Senate seized, its leader executed, the skies above pouring fire upon the capital. Amid the wreckage, the Dark Warrior stood tall, reveling in ruin, saluting the survivors of his order, before turning toward a companion left broken and bleeding. With cold command, he summoned aid, then stepped to the temple's broken gates to watch the world below drown in flames. With a crushing strike from his saber hilt, one warrior staggered his foe, lunging for the throat in a bid to end it, yet the dark figure foresaw the move, pivoted, and drove his blade deep into his attacker's abdomen. Pain and disbelief froze the fallen fighter as flames from a burning temple glinted in his fading eyes, while Imperial ships descended to unleash ruin upon the capital. Outside, chaos raged as enemy forces seized power, and bombardment scorched the city. Amid shattered walls, the Dark Warrior stood triumphant, commending his surviving allies before turning to a wounded companion and calling for aid. At the temple's ruined gate, he watched bombers rain destruction across the surface, savoring the collapse of his enemy's great bastion. He opened a channel to his commander aboard the warship, reporting the temple's fall. Medics rushed in, and under his command they treated the wounded, giving special attention to the one closest to his heart. Though she resisted leaving his side, he convinced her to go with the team, promising to follow once his mission on the planet was done. When his ally asked about the fate of the fallen defenders, he declared that the temple itself would serve as their tomb. Using the explosives from the captured dropship, he prepared the end of the ancient structure. Standing at a distance, the Sith watched in silence until he triggered the detonator, collapsing the great temple into rubble as fire and stone rained down. Protected by their force of will, they cheered as the symbol of their enemies crumbled into dust, marking the ruin of the Republic's heart. Chapter 8. Disillusionment. With the Empire's collapse, the fight on the capital was all but decided, the last defenders falling as the Sith pressed their final assault. As the war raged across the shattered world, the armies that had burned the Great Temple withdrew to their orbiting vessels. Yet, one Sith remained amid the ruins, watching the firestorm engulf the planet. For endless hours, bombers and dreadnoughts unleashed devastation, until suddenly the skies fell silent and enemy craft shifted into patrols. Confused and seething, the Dark Warrior demanded answers, only to learn that his superiors had changed course, replacing destruction with occupation. Martial law was declared, the Senate abolished, survivors executed, and the heart of government transformed into a throne of shadow. Cruisers formed an iron blockade. War droids swept the depths, hunting for fugitives, and even hospitals were seized for the conqueror's wounded. Enraged by betrayal and the knowledge that the planet was now reduced to a bargaining chip in distant negotiations rather than obliterated as promised, the warrior left the ruins behind and marched toward the halls of power to confront the one who had claimed dominion. It was a shattering moment, a betrayal of everything he believed the Empire represented, and a rejection of the vision he had devoted his life to. He longed to see the Republic's symbol utterly destroyed, the way of the Sith demanding the obliteration of enemies with overwhelming might. Arriving at the Senate building, he was brought before a commander only to discover another Sith had already claimed the victory of reporting the temple's fall. Rage boiled as he questioned the orders, but the reply was sharp and cold. These were the Emperor's commands, and he was reminded of his place. With a twisted smile, the commander revealed that the one he cared for had been redirected, taken not to safety but to a hospital under Sith control, and then watched for his reaction. Fury exploded as he ignited his blade, only for it to be intercepted by another Sith. Their clash short-lived before the fight was halted. Dismissed and humiliated, he left, but his path led him to the hospital where outside, broken and grieving citizens of the captured world recognized him as Sith and hurled their scorn, blaming him for all the pain surrounding them. He stood motionless until a jagged stone was hurled at him, and in a single surge of fury, the force erupted outward, crushing bodies and scattering the crowd like broken leaves. With the path cleared, he stormed into the hospital, seizing the one he had come for and tearing her from enemy care to prepare her escape. As the ship carried them away, his mind replayed the chaos he had unleashed. He knew it was no clever move. Yet rage boiled hotter at the thought of rivals twisting loyalty and using others as pawns to undermine him. To him, they were schemers, hollow climbers clawing for favor, blind to the true way of the Sith. In that storm of thought, darker questions struck whether love itself had any place in his path, whether his loyalty belonged to the Emperor's vision or to something far more dangerous. The answer came swiftly from above. Stripped of command on the ground, he was cast into orbit, placed as warden of the blockade around the shattered world. His power diminished while another claimed his former post. Thus began Chapter 9. No weakness. High above the conquered world, the Dark Commander stood aboard his flagship, directing endless convoys as the blockade tightened its grip. When an unregistered dropship pierced the system, interceptors dragged it in, revealing a former sniper turned hunter with secrets to sell. He spoke of a smuggler carrying a hidden Jedi, a rogue knight driven by vengeance. The warning proved true. A freighter clung like a parasite to a massive transport, slipping into orbit unseen until Imperial scans exposed it. Pursued and cornered, the ship darted behind Sith vessels, shields of steel against the flagship's guns. The order came swift and merciless move. The convoy seized the intruder, but the freighter tore free from the tractor beam, plunging desperately toward the planet below. The Valor unleashed its firepower, shattering the massive vessel before it pierced deeper into the skies. But Kor and Lennier had already leapt free, Lennier channeling the Force to slow their plunge until they hit the ground alive. Dust rising around them, they began to plot their next move. Elsewhere, the shadowed Sith sent his recovered agent to seize prized captives and technology from Tusket, marking them as trophies for the Empire. On the surface, Kor and Lennier pressed on, slipping into the buried levels of the ruined Jedi Temple, where Lennier uncovered recordings that revealed the Sith himself had slain her master, and then a twilight figure remained ever shielded at his side. Fueled by grim clarity, Lennier resolved to infiltrate the Valor and face him, while Kor scouted the spaceport only to see the same twilight overseeing prisoners. Rushing back with the news, he found Lennier gone, already drawn back to the temple ruins in search of answers, unaware that her enemy had foreseen her every step. He had uncovered her past and predicted her return, waiting at the temple where their paths crossed in the ruins. When she saw him, fury consumed her, and with a blazing lightsaber she attacked, clashing fiercely with the Dark Warrior. The battle raged, but as his strength overwhelmed her, she fled on a speeder with the help of her ally. Consumed by vengeance, she swore to wound him at his core by targeting the one he held close. Together they stormed the spaceport, tracking their prey, but though her rage burned, she could not betray her teachings. Seeing the suffering her enemy had inflicted, she chose not to kill, but instead struck her unconscious and dragged her away, while her ally escaped aboard an Imperial vessel. As the ship fled, he arrived once more, finding her standing over the fallen figure. Another duel ignited, and this time she wielded her captive as leverage, forcing him to spare the fleeing ally. Yet as blades clashed, his power surged. With a storm of lightning, he struck her down, ending the fight and leaving her defeated. He loomed over the fallen Jedi, torn between rage and gratitude. She had dared to use his love against him, yet she had not slain her. For a fleeting moment, mercy stirred within him, and he let her live, granting escape when every Sith instinct urged otherwise. But as silence returned, his mind churned with unease, questioning why he had spared her at all. That mercy revealed a truth too dangerous to ignore. Love had become his weakness, and weakness was death. When she awoke, his decision was final. His blade struck without hesitation, severing the bond and erasing what chained him. Far away, the stage shifted to tense diplomacy, where after relentless debate, the Republic bowed to an accord that bled in favor of the Empire. A treaty sealed not with triumph, but with compromise, christening the dawn of a fragile and bitter Cold War. With the treaty signed, the Great Galactic War came to its official end, and the Empire withdrew from Coruscant, leaving behind only scattered war machines in the shadows of the ruined city. The once glorious world lay broken, scarred beyond recognition. While the Sith hierarchy drowned itself in endless schemes for power, one warrior turned away, refusing to waste himself in politics. He chose instead to lead expeditions into uncharted space, pushing the Empire's reach into the unknown. Yet the so-called peace was fragile as the Republic struggled to rebuild while the Sith tightened their grip on conquered worlds. This tense era, remembered as the Cold War, gave rise to secret weapons and dangerous discoveries, including the Foundry, a forge of endless droids fueled by darkness. When a Jedi sought to claim it, the Sith struck first, preventing an army from rising against the Empire. But even as these battles raged, darker truths surfaced. The Emperor's true design was not conquest, but annihilation, a ritual to drain life itself and ascend beyond mortality. The galaxy stood on the brink once more, as uneasy peace gave way to war's return. Fearing the rise of a power beyond control, the Dark Council struck an uneasy bargain with their sworn foes, uniting briefly to bring down the shadow that loomed over them. On the war-torn world of Dromund Kaas, the so-called Emperor fell to a champion of the Republic, shattering the fragile pact and plunging the galaxy back into endless strife. Amid this chaos, Malgus lingered on the edges, striking only at chosen targets like the destruction of Hammer Station, biding his time. With the Emperor gone and Sith leadership fractured, his long-nurtured ambitions began to stir. He had never been content as a mere soldier. His vision reached far beyond. When a rival's reckless campaign ended in defeat, Malgus seized the chance, aiding the enemy in secret and watching as his foe perished. With that death, he claimed a seat on the Dark Council and command of the Empire's military might. From there, he directed campaigns with cold precision, inheriting the spoils of war crystals that could cloak entire fleets and using them to tighten his grip on power. Reform had always been his call, and now the moment had come for his designs to take shape. A new order, forged in his image, rising from the ashes of a broken empire. He had always been different, seeing power not in superiority but in unity with many species, dreaming of an empire built on inclusion rather than corruption. His vision clashed with the traditional council and the military, yet in secret he forged a hidden fleet powered by crystals, the cornerstone of his true ambition. To him, the Sith were pretenders, too weak, too willing to bargain with their foes instead of crushing them, and so he swore loyalty only to the dark side itself. When his armada was ready, he struck with thunder, declaring the old council unworthy and proclaiming the rise of a new empire where tolerance and alien alliances would replace the rot of infighting. Crowned as its emperor, he revealed a war machine greater than any before, built through ancient foundry power, a droid army to sweep the stars clean. His words burned like fire, a promise of war until purity was achieved, and his call to arms drew soldiers, outcasts, Sith of all kinds, and mercenaries to his banner, forging a force that shook the galaxy. Instead of unleashing a full war, he tested his rebellion with scattered battles, waiting for the perfect strike against both Republic and Empire. As victories piled up in the shadows of unknown regions, disillusioned Sith rallied to him, including a fierce defector who rose as his trusted blade. His strength swelled, bolstered by an alliance with a secretive collective of alien scientists who armed his fleet with near-invisible warships and fortified his hidden stronghold. With momentum on his side, he sent his new ally to press the campaign, but defeat exposed a trail back to his lair above Ilum. The Republic, seizing their chance, forged an uneasy strike force of Jedi and Sith, storming the station and closing in on his throne. Chapter 12. Fallen caught off guard, the Dark Warrior faced enemies at his gates, unprepared for the reckoning to come. He stood firm, knowing the surrounding fleet was far too powerful for his forces to withstand. With grim resolve, he activated the station's self-destruct, vowing to take as many of his enemies with him as possible. Then, turning to face the strike team before him, he descended with a thunderous crash, lightsaber blazing and eyes burning with fury. "Die or defeat me," he declared, meeting them head-on with the ferocity of a battle-hardened warrior who had survived countless wars. Every strike showed why he was feared as one of the strongest of his kind, yet even his relentless power could not hold forever. Pushed back step by step, his strength faltered, and at last he was driven over the edge into the reactor shaft below. His fall marked the end of his uprising, his vision collapsing into ruin as he vanished into the abyss. Chapter 13. Chains shattered, yet new ones were forged. After the downfall of the Dark Emperor, another rose under a different face, leading an empire that swept aside both Republic and Sith alike. But even such power fell when the Outlander, a figure of unmatched might, struck them down and united rivals into one alliance. That fragile unity soon cracked, as the Sith sought strength once more under a new ruler who harbored a secret long buried. In the wreckage of a lost battle, Malgus had survived, remade with steel and frozen in time until he was unleashed again as a weapon of war. Bound by chains of mind and machine, he was sent against the Jedi on Ossus, where he struck down a master with the fury of one who had been twisted into a hound of conquest. Though bound by chains of cybernetics, he began to question every order forced upon him, resisting the invisible leash that sought to control his will. After missions carried out for the Empire, he turned his blade upon the device that shackled his actions, searing it away before seeking the aid of a droid to purge the programming buried in his mind. The implants were torn free, yet the scars of conditioning lingered, as the shadow of a new emperor pressed relentlessly against his thoughts with dreams and visions of domination. Refusing to be broken, he recalled the fate of another Sith whose mind had once been erased, and set his course toward ancient ruins in search of forgotten wisdom. There, within relics of dark power, he uncovered the knowledge to sever the last bonds of control. At last, his spirit shattered the chains that sought to bind it, and he emerged free once more, a warrior guided only by his own unyielding will. He shattered the chains that once bound him and swore that no master would ever claim him again, never to bow, never to return to the Empire. With that oath, he set out to continue his quest of building a new dominion, unaware that the commander of the Alliance was already on his trail. In Chapter 14, a new hope rose as his search for power led him to a hidden temple on Elam, where a rare holocron was said to lie deep within the ancient halls of Null. This relic held the names of those attuned to the Force, potential warriors he could bend to his will. But when he arrived, Jedi and Sith had already clashed for its possession. Inside the chamber, the artifact rested within a strange machine as two Jedi pressed their advantage against a lone Sith, severing his hand in the duel. Then, with cold precision, he struck from behind, driving his blade through the Sith's back. The dying warrior spat a curse, branding him traitor before collapsing into silence. With the threat removed, he turned to face the remaining Jedi, a seasoned master and his steadfast apprentice. As Sehar rushed toward the holocron, ready to destroy it along with the strange machine holding it, Malgus struck with a storm of lightning, but she dodged and reached her target. Malgus then turned on the Jedi Master, their clash fierce as his brutal attacks pushed the Master to the edge, though he still stood his ground. In the chaos, Sahar accidentally triggered the machine, trapping herself in a force field as visions of her past consumed her, shaking her loyalty. Malgus seized the moment, declaring that both Jedi and Sith hoard power by deciding who may wield the Force while discarding the rest, a twisted act of playing God. His words rattled her, but before the influence could take hold, the Jedi Master shattered the machine and crushed Malgus beneath the temple's ruin. Yet Malgus endured, watching as the Padawan seized the holocron once again. Tension rose as she and her master clashed over what she had witnessed, only for Malgus to break free and reveal the truth. The machine was built to uncover forgotten children with the Force, those rejected or ignored, and with that revelation he reached once more for the holocron. His apprentice fought back, and chaos erupted as the chamber shook apart. From the wreckage, the Dark Warrior twisted broken cables into living chains, binding the Jedi Master and dragging him forward. With one merciless strike, the Master fell, leaving his student consumed by rage and sorrow. She seized the fallen blade and clashed with the monster, their duel raging in the collapsing ruin. Though wounded, he endured, disarmed her, and claimed the holocron. As debris thundered down, she shielded herself, but he tore the relic from her hands and left her with a chilling promise that freedom would come only if she chose her own path. Vanishing into the shadows of the temple, he emerged only to face a strike force lying in wait. Outnumbered and overwhelmed, even his fury could not prevail. He was finally defeated, shackled, and taken into captivity. Locked away in a fortress built to restrain his immense power, the Dark Warrior sat in silence, meditating within his prison. When the commander of the Alliance arrived to confront him, questions were hurled about his interest in the Emperor's heir, but he dismissed them with scorn, branding the visitor a fool. He declared that everything believed about the shadowed figure known as Null was a lie, then, without hesitation, recounted the true tale of that hidden Sith. When pressed on why he would reveal such secrets, he coldly replied that it mattered little truth could not be buried forever. He warned that his designs were already in motion, unstoppable by any hand, and that his vision of fire, of an empire rising while Jedi and Sith alike crumbled, would come to pass. As his words echoed through the chamber, he pushed against the stasis field with raw force, testing its strength, his defiance burning brighter than the prison meant to contain him. The chamber trembled as the field strained but held, the commander warning that whatever had begun would be stopped before turning his back and walking away. Later, the galaxy burned with turmoil as a Mandalorian civil war erupted, their new leader clashing with a rising rebellion that claimed the clans had been reduced to little more than hired blades. The Alliance sought peace, uncovering a hidden thread tying the chaos back to the captive Sith. Dragged before him, the Mandalorian Avenger demanded answers. Yet he dismissed the accusations with cold disdain, declaring such rebellions meaningless. To him, the Mandalorians were shattered, a people lost in doubt and irrelevance. Then came the storm. Malgus surged with power, breaking against the chains of his prison as his voice roared through the chamber, vowing to tear down the galaxy's decayed order and all the systems that had bred only weakness and stagnation. He declared he would burn every legacy to ashes just to see who would rise from the flames, then sensed her waiting beyond the prison door. With venom in his voice, he mocked her failures, her broken forces, and contrasted them with the strength of another, ending with a cruel prediction of her downfall. And when she demanded answers, he met her fury with silence before turning to face his longtime foe, admitting that only this rival had ever truly come close to understanding him, lamenting that the one who could have been his equal was doomed to remain his enemy. When his adversary departed, he sat in silence until everything shifted. For once the holocron was claimed, she returned with mercenaries, storming the station, cutting down the machines one by one until they finally reached the prison chamber itself. With a roar of fire, she launched skyward on her jetpack, blasting the control unit that bound the Dark Warrior, shattering metal and chains alike. The platform crumbled beneath them, plunging into the abyss, yet a shuttle rose from the void to seize both rescuer and freed captive before they fell. Together they vanished into the darkness, their mission unfinished, their fate uncertain. The tale closes with his legacy unresolved, his path still shrouded in mystery. Yet centuries later, his name lingered, whispered through the teachings of the Sith, etched into doctrine and preserved in forbidden texts. His mastery of war and shadow impressed even those who came long after, shaping the thoughts of masters and apprentices alike. In his words, they saw reflections of pain, betrayal, and transformation, echoes of their own journeys. He remained a figure of fear and fascination, a warrior who broke chains and carved his name into the eternal history of the Sith. His strength and influence echoing through the ages. The warrior's tale unfolds like a storm etched in shadows and fire, his scars carved as living proof of survival. His breath hissing through the mask that bound him yet never silenced him. His path a relentless march of conquest, betrayal, and vision. A figure rising and falling only to rise again. His legacy not sealed in a single moment but carried forward as an unbroken echo, studied, feared, and remembered long after the battles had turned to dust.